Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Next Deal podcast. As always, we are here to help you guys find your next deal. Remember to like, subscribe, follow, give us a 5-star rating on Apple, and share this podcast around. It really helps us get the word out. Today, I'm excited for our conversation. I'm joined by Vince Hall, our co host, and James Gaskin with Renovo Financial. Sorry. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for coming on today. Super excited to have you on here. So we met through a mastermind collective genius sometime last year when we were talking about earlier. I don't really remember when, but sometime last year. And you're pretty heavily involved in like business development and the financial world, things like that. Could you tell us just a little bit about your story, kind of who you are and what you do?
Sure, yeah. So, Renovo Financial as a business is really a lending operation, right? We make loans to real estate investors to acquire, renovate, build ground up, or own long term rental real estate. So it's all residential and all investor focused. So we've really been focused on that niche for 13, 14 years now, and have grown a pretty national footprint. So that's the business I work to build every day. But my background, I started in real estate consulting and worked for some really large accounting firms on the consulting side, and kind of switched over to real estate and getting more into the more of the financing side of it primarily. And have been fortunate to work for some really neat companies, and jumped over to Renovo about 5 years ago to really help that company build from what was at that time a one city kind of very hyper focused Chicagoland lending operation into what we are today, and where we're going, which is the goal is to be the number one lender in the country. I think we sit at number 4, so we got a little ways to go. But
Okay.
but it's a lot of fun, and I get a chance to work with some amazing people and meet amazing people like you at some of these events. So excited to share what I can and hopefully bring a little value.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate that. We, from what I understand, we haven't used you guys yet, but I know you guys are local here in St. Louis. My wife and I are starting to do some stuff this year here as well. So definitely we'll
Same.
be chatting with yeah, Vinny is too as well. So I know we'll be chatting with your local office here, but you guys are a little bit different than most lenders that I've seen in the fact that you, instead of having like just one national office and being licensed in every state and doing it that way, you guys actually have physical locations in the different markets that you're in, correct?
To back it up, we really believe that real estate investing, it, in the small to medium size kind of, especially on the residential side, it's hyper local, right? Most of the best operators are very focused on a particular geography, and it could be a city, it could be a zip code, it even could be a neighborhood, right? And so we feel like in order to bring real value to our client and to be the best partner for a high end investor, um, we need to match them at their level of expertise in the area that they care about, right? So if we're based in Chicago and we have a bunch of people sitting in Chicago calling into St. Louis, for example, they may know absolutely nothing about St. Louis. And could they still make you a loan? For sure. Yeah, of course. But are they going to really bring you any value outside of loan pricing and terms? And hopefully they do what they say they were going to do. Like, it's going to be hard to do that, right? So yes, our model is a little unique in that, our loan officers, we really kind of go around and we build these local businesses. And that's what I spend my time with, right? It's finding the right people. It takes a very high level of what I would call a lender, not just a salesperson who sells money. And so we try to find the right people, put them in those seats, and then help them grow those businesses. And all the while, just really have to be focused on execution and delivering consistently, because that's what it takes to keep a good client. But other than that, we've really kind of tried to optimize our business for that upper tier and higher volume, higher experience kind of customer. And so far, it's worked extremely well, as we've built out over the last 4 years or so.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think like the people that we've worked with in the past have either been only local or only national, right? Like you've just got those two separate ones, and it's nice to work with both of those, but I like the ability to actually have someone that's focused locally, and then you can, we work with a lot of people say, hey, like if they have an office in your location, you'd want to work with this company too with what they do. Because you guys will fund, like you said, new construction, flips, long-term holds, all that kind of stuff. Are you doing it like traditional hard money lending? Is that kind of like the process that you guys follow?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I think the industry is working hard to go away from the term hard money, but yes, I think
Sure.
that's correct.
Sure.
But that's fair, right? It's an asset based loan, right? We're making a loan against a piece of real estate, and the same kind of terms, typically are going to apply across the industry. 70 to maybe 75% loan to after repair value. We typically we look at a loan to cost, total cost basis as well. And, we're charging interest only on the bridge loan side. So bridge loans being anything short term with construction, right? Ground up, fix and flip. We do multifamily as well. So, value add or ground up on that side. And, we do all the permanent stuff too, which is a little bit different. That's kind of getting more into like the non-QM world, and that's a little bit new for our space. But we do a ton of 30-year fixed rate kind of DSCR loans that are really kind of sized around a debt service coverage ratio and things like that.
So James, we have, the Next Deal podcast. The listeners are, going to be anybody that has made a deal or two deals, or maybe they made 50 deals or 150 deals, right? So a person that wanted to, get some rental properties, right? But they didn't know, how do I finance these? How do I go about it? Like, they walk into your local branch, what would the process be for someone that would be new into this, to just get some information, to get started, to kind of, get their mind wrapped around how to even go about it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We like to start with, just getting to know one another, right? Getting to know our customer or prospective customer. And I think the first thing is like, and Justin, you hit on this a minute ago, right? We do things a little bit differently. There's a lot of really great lenders out there, and everybody's got a little bit of a different niche. And I think first step is like, hey, are we the right fit for what you're trying to do? And that just takes a conversation and getting to know, what does your business look like, in the real estate investing component, and can we be accretive? Can we bring value to what you're trying to do? And we're not going to be the right fit for everybody. So that's the first step. And it's really it's very simple, right? We want to build long-term relationships with our customers. So we spend some time getting to know one another in the beginning to make sure that it is the right fit. Cause there's a lot of lenders out there who are highly transactional, and that's not as important. And that's totally fine. There's a need for that. We're a little different, but if you don't have the right fit going in, then, it usually makes the outcome not as ideal. So that's really the first step. But outside of that, I think it's really just understanding, your properties and financial condition, right? And we don't have a full on bank underwrite. That's the advantage of working with a private lender, or you used the term hard money earlier. Like that's what we're here for, right? Is to make the process much easier, because we're not beholden to all the regulations that banks have to kind of abide by. And so it gives us the ability to move quicker, be a little bit, have a little bit more approachable underwriting. But, I think we just have to get to know those pieces, and then, price out the deal, make sure it's a fit. And, the process from there is fairly easy.
Yeah. I love that you said you want to make these relationships long-term. I love that, because they come to you, they get a good loan, the deal's successful, they're going to come back,
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think
that's right. I mean,
go ahead.
I was just going to, my follow-up was just that I think there's, we think of ourselves really not as being in the loan transaction business, and I tell this to our team all the time, like, we're not really in the loan transaction business here. We're in the borrower recruiting business. The idea, it's a people business. The finance piece is, that's easy, right? We want to work with really great clients that we can add value to. And if we can do that and make their life a little bit easier, then, and we can provide competitive products, right? You have to be competitive. But if we can be competitive in rate and terms and leverage and all that, then we should be able to work together for a long time. And that's a much more fun way to do this, at its most basic level. And so that's just kind of what we think about. It's really just about finding the right fit. And we can be a great fit for lots of people, but that's very important to us. I think that for us, I think it's really important that we, there's a million ways to do this, right? And what we found is the best way for us to make good loans, which is critical. Some of it comes back to like the long-term kind of mentality or focus that we have, right? We have a very long-term mindset. In the short term, if you have a short-term thought process, like, being transactional makes a ton of sense, right? You're capturing as much business as you can, but you're not optimizing for repeat and for the long-term kind of health of the business. And that's a hard way to do it. You're constantly having to find new customers. Your existing clients aren't that happy. They're not saying great things about it. It makes it over time very difficult. And so what we found is the best way for us to run this business is to really invest in the people, find great customers. And then if we can treat them really well, then we should be able to make really good loans with the same people for a long period of time. It's a lot more fun. And the end result is always better from a business standpoint anyway. So I think that's the way we try to kind of do it. And, I think that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah. And Justin, I think you said on a previous podcast, like you've actually become friends with one of your lenders, right? Like you guys go out to dinner and hang out.
Yep.
And
Yep. They're, we've gone to dinner with them a couple times, good friends of ours. Like we talk a lot more. He's actually in a mastermind I'm in as well, a separate one where James and I met. But yeah, it's all about the relationship aspect of it. And it's something that I know personally I neglected for a long time because I was more focused on like, oh, we just got to get more business. We got to get more business. We got to get more business. And it's like, well, I'm also missing out on so much business by not nurturing the relationships we do have and making those as long-term and personal as possible. So that's kind of a pivot we've made over the last year and a half or so, is really focusing on building that relationship side of things. And ultimately it's served us very well. And I think we see it obviously in other businesses, like you guys do it too now, or have been doing it for however long you've been in business with them now. But, I think that's an important thing that a lot of people miss, is that long-term game. And if you relate it to real estate investing as well, like that's how you get referrals from past clients, right? Is by having those good relationships with sellers at the closing table, by doing things the right way, doing what you say you're going to do and following through. And we've got referrals from past people we've sold from. I know countless people that have had that happen, that deal wouldn't have came had you not handled that situation the way you did.
Yeah.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious, like just switching gears a little bit, because your whole role, if I understand it correctly, has been to move that company into those separate markets, right? And building those. So there's a lot that goes into that. So from a just like business development, it's all right. We hear Vince's dog all the time too.
Give me 1 second. Let me let this guy out because he's going to annoy us.
You're good.
Come on.
I actually pre-closed all the windows upstairs so Luna cannot bark at somebody.
That's so
funny. That's a smart idea. Yeah, I have this puppy, but he's like 100 pounds, and he's just a lot. He's a lot to deal with. He's in that phase. So sorry about that.
No, you're good. What kind of dog is he?
He's a Borzoi. Are you familiar? Have you ever heard of that?
Nope.
Yeah, no one's ever. I've only had one person who's ever recognized that off the rip. It's
Justin's looking it up.
I am. I'm Googling it right now. Oh, they kind of look like a greyhound. Kind of.
Yeah, they're a sight hound.
Okay.
but they're really big. Their original name was the Russian Wolfhound, so they were bred to hunt wolves in Russia for like the monarchy, whatever the royal kind of class was. So they were they have an awesome history. They're super cool, and they're amazing dogs. But this one is 9 months old, and he is he's in that phase where he throws these little tantrums. And he's very dramatic, so he'll be in the
He's
back
that teenager
whining,
phase.
and he is. It's really pretty funny. But anyway, hopefully he'll occupy himself outside for a minute.
Yeah, no worries at all, man.
Yeah. Luna wants to like murder the Amazon person when they come to the door, and Justin's like, "Bro,
yeah,
we need
every time, every time."
I get it. Yeah, it doesn't matter how many times they come. They're always a threat. Always a threat. For sure.
Yep, our dogs are the same. They're the tiniest little like lap dogs ever, but they have such a big bark and think that they're and then like they'll just run up to anybody and just attack them with love and snuggles and like you're not going to do anything. We know you're not.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's all for show, but it's very important to them to put that out there.
Yeah. We got to know where they stand. But anyway, getting back to my question, I was kind of curious, like with getting into different markets, because you guys are in 20 markets, something like that now, right?
Yeah, something like that. 18 to 20.
Okay. With you kind of spearheading that and getting into those other markets, what are some things that like roadblocks or hurdles that you've come across while doing that and expanding from like a business aspect, right? Like 'cause there's people that'll move into new markets and things like that I know I've ran into issues with, whether if it's a new business or new market that we're going into. Like there's always something. So what are some of those like things that you've come across that you've had to overcome and kind of work through? Kind of curious to see or hear how that's went for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I think for us, it's a couple of things, right? Anytime when we're going into a new market, we assume that we're going to go in there and have to build the business literally from scratch, right? Like we hire experienced loan officers, but many of them, they have some kind of restrictive covenant in their existing employment agreement that says, hey, you can't take all your customers, right? You can't go call all these existing clients. And that's perfectly fine. Like we don't hire anybody because they have a book of business. Like we hire talented people that fit our culture and that we know will deliver a great level of customer service. And then if we have to start from zero, that's fine. Again, back to like the long-term mentality that we bring to the business. It's not about this year's production for that new loan officer. It's about what they're going to do with us in 2, 3, 5 years, right? So we're happy to build from the ground up, and that's how we can build really great businesses that way. So that's always a challenge, right? Is that we go into a market and nobody knows who we are. We have zero brand recognition, and this is a crowded space. Like a lot of people lending, and you mentioned it earlier, right? You have these hyper local people, high net worth folks, family offices, they've raised a little friends and they're lending it out, and they can do that. They can be very flexible and all that. And there's a lot of, and they're dialed into those markets. And then you've got the big national guys that are really competitive on pricing and terms, and they're hitting all those markets too. So we've got to cut through the noise, and we do that by hiring really talented people that are not afraid to get out and hustle and talk to as many people as possible and build a great network. And it's a brick by brick thing. So, but that's a struggle, right? Especially when you hire people who are used to being very successful. They come in, they kind of have to start over, and it's a grind to build it back up. And so that, from a business perspective and a management perspective, that's a challenge in making sure that we motivate people and keep them moving forward and positive while the early kind of slog is going on. That's always tricky. Just in general, right? In the real estate investing business, I would say like across markets in the US, the business is 85 to 90% the same. It's similar to do a deal in, Charlotte as it is in St. Louis. but
Yeah.
there are some differences, and those differences are very meaningful. And the way that we've overcome that is we hire talented lenders. Like a lot of our loan officers come from banks. They have bank credit training. They really understand the nuances of real estate finance, and that's really important. And then if they really know the market that they're in, which we look for, right, then they already know a lot of that nuance that our customer finds to be very important. And so that's the way we've kind of overcome some of the challenges with, like, hey, in this city, permitting is like a really big deal. Like, it takes forever. It's it's an owner's process, much different than over here, right? So they know that stuff already, and we can kind of jump the learning curve. And then internally, the credit side has been a big, that was actually my biggest, that was the biggest test in my mind, because when we started to expand, we started in Chicago. And I don't know how much you guys know about Chicago or whatever, but like it's probably the hardest. It's definitely, one of the hardest markets in the country to lend in. You can really, you
Pretty
can't make
restrictive.
mistakes there. Well, it's a block by block city. You got to know the city really, really well, right? You make
Okay.
a loan
Cook
in
County's
this
pretty
neighborhood.
weird.
Yeah. And if you make the wrong decision, or you don't understand the market very well, you could easily get yourself in trouble. And then if you do make a bad loan, the process for exercising your guarantee and getting that asset back, which is ultimately the security behind the loan that we made, it takes a really long time. It's very expensive. It can take years to get the property back. So if you make too many of those, it can kill you.
Yeah.
So you just have to be really disciplined about credit and about your underwriting when you go into a market like Chicago. And so as a result, we have a very strong credit culture, very disciplined credit culture. But if you take that same credit lens and you apply it to a market like Texas, for example, where I live, you will not survive. You won't make it. You can't be competitive because it's a very different place. In Texas, you can get a property back in 60 days, 45 days. It's very fast and loose here. Lenders are willing to take more risk. They close faster, right? And if you apply a Chicago credit lens to Texas, you'll never make a loan. So we had to be able to switch gears when we're looking at Texas versus Chicago versus Florida, right? And that was something that I was not proven, right? I knew everything else we were doing was going to work, and but we were able to do that effectively, and that was a huge I think win for the business and our ability to scale. I hope that answers your question.
It does. I mean, it kind of comes down to two things, like I said, hiring the right people for multiple assets or multiple aspects of the business, right? If you're lending, someone who's familiar with some of the different things you have to deal with in that state, but also being able to pivot quickly when you go into a new market and when you're changing things. And I think those are both huge things for anyone that's listening from a real estate investing aspect. Is like, you always, no matter what business you're in, you have to hire the right people. And for a lot of people, like, it's funny, I think it was Gary V. I saw a video from him the other day, and someone asked him, like, how do I know I made the right hire? And he's like, you won't, like, until they perform. He's like, you can do all your due diligence and all your stuff, but until they come in and perform. And kind of went back to, like, when you're hiring and hiring the right people to be able to fire quickly if you have to, if someone is just immediately a non-performer, or someone that just is not, not a right culture fit or whatever. You mentioned you have strong credit culture and things like that. If that person's not a fit, finding that right person pretty quickly, I think, is important for a lot of people to recognize and realize, because I've made the mistake dozens of times of hiring the wrong person and keeping the wrong person because I wanted to change them into the right person. and it doesn't usually work that way.
Yeah, no, that's well said. It's in the end, it's a lot. Everything kind of boils down to people, and you've got to be really diligent. And we spend a lot of time up front trying to make sure we find the right people, but we make mistakes all the time. And you just have to be willing to jump in and correct those mistakes, and know also what are the potential pitfalls. I mean, I actually spend a lot of time in our recruiting process when I'm talking to new salespeople in particular, uh, almost trying to talk them out of taking our job. Right? It's like, all right, hey, we've identified like this seems like a fit, right? You kind of get what we're doing, you have the right experience, feels like this is going to work, but let me tell you all the reasons that you may not want to do this, and we'll go through how hard it's going to be. And I overstate it, and I do it on multiple phone calls to push them away because I want them to know what they're getting into. I don't want it. I can make this sound really cool and sexy
Yeah.
and fun and all the money you
Yeah.
can make and all that stuff, but that doesn't help me when they get into it and it's like, oh man, this is hard. And I tell people, and it's true, that I would say every salesperson we hire, they go through a period where they question whether or not they made the right decision to join the company, because it's hard. What we do is hard. But when you get past the hard part, over time it gets easier, because the relationships, the repeat business, the high trust, the referrals, all that stuff, it starts to run downhill at a certain point. But you've got to get to the top of the hill first. And so they need to know that, because otherwise you can have really good people that come in and they get burned out. And it's because the expectation wasn't properly set. So,
That's good. I like that.
That's really good. For sure.
Oh, you're almost, I mean, like you said, you're almost trying to talk them out of that position by letting them know, like, hey, this is the truth of what this job is. Like, especially if you're going into a new market, that's probably the hardest part of the whole thing, is when you're brand new and you don't have a book of business and you have to go and find that and build those relationships. I'm assuming that's kind of one of the harder things for these people when they come in.
Absolutely. It's a grind, because again, we're not trying to do the transactional thing. So we do want to, it takes time. We want to get to know the clients. And that's not fast. And so when you start, and if you're starting from zero, you're going to go through probably several months where you're going to do a lot of work and you're not going to see a lot of payoff, right? You're not going to see a lot of LOIs going out. You're not going to see a lot of closed deals, and that's okay. And so and that's how we manage the ramp up with these folks, is that we really try to set that expectation that I do not expect you to do a lot of loans in the beginning. So, let's just really focus on the process and the technique and all of the little things that we know, when you do those over time consistently, will yield the right results. And if they don't, then we have the ability to go in and, all right, are we talking to the wrong people? What questions are we asking? Are we asking the right questions? Are we listening enough, or are we talking to, right? It's technique. We can fine tune that. But if we focus on the process and we kind of redefine success, then hopefully they can kind of they can stick with it long enough to kind of get to the other side, where it's like, okay, it's starting to click now. I've got my sea legs. Now I'm ready to run, right? That's the trick, that we have to pull off. And not everybody's ready for it. A lot of people say, oh yeah, I get it. I know it's going to be hard. I'm confident. And like, it doesn't always work, right? It's still hard, no matter what. And so, we have to do our best to continue to set those expectations, manage people the right way, push them, but also, nurture them through that part of the process.
Yeah. I love that too, because the people in your organization, they're essentially professionals, right? That get separated from the everyday players, right? Same thing in sports, same thing in military aspects, right? You get the people that are the everydayers, but like the professionals in sports are professionals because they're willing to do the hard things behind the scenes, right? That most people don't see. They're told it's going to be hard. You're probably not going to make it, pretty much their whole entire career from junior high all the way up, right? It was the same thing for me, in the military. Like I joined the military special operations and psychological warfare, and I was told over and over and over, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. You're going to hurt. You're going to be in pain. You're going to be in so much. You're not going to make it, like all up front, setting these expectations of like, dude, it's so hard to graduate. But then when you do it, you're a badass, and I am better, and I am a believer, And that's the people that are now in your organization, right? They're the professionals that have stepped into the role, and they're freaking badasses. And that's what I love
Yeah,
about that expectation you set up front.
totally. No, that's
Yeah.
right. I think it's powerful. You
Yeah.
have to be careful though, because it's also a psychological tool that when you push someone away, that they tend to they tend to come towards you,
It
right?
reflects
It's
the, yeah.
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 So you do have to be careful that you really do it in the way that you're not inviting the response that you want, which is no, I'm gonna dig in, and if that's not genuine, right? And that's the thing,
Hmm.
you don't always know, and
Yeah.
you got to get people on the field, and hopefully we do a good enough job of vetting up front that we minimize the misses there, but they happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I want to switch gears too a little bit. So you guys, you want to be the biggest, lender in the nation. You're growing. Like, obviously, you probably already have cities in mind that you want to go to. Like, what sets the criteria for you to get into another city? Like, what makes one city more attractive than another? You know?
I love that question, because my answer is probably going to surprise you. We actually we when we first started out doing this, right? 29 late 2019, early 2020 is when we really kind of settled on this model for growth. We kind of said, all right, we do need to do the work, right? We need to do the research and look at different markets. What markets do we really like? Where would we want to be? But we said, from day one, we are not going to let that, like the data part, drive where we go. It's all going to be
Hmm.
following the right people. So, because my view is, I don't care what city you're in, there's good deals there. Every city in this country, there's good deals. And the
Agreed.
people that will find them are the people that are really experts in those markets, that have the right relationships, that know people. Most of our loan officers are investors also, right? So they are
Hmm.
transacting themselves, right? So they're in the ecosystem that our customer is in. So we just said, hey, when we find the right people, those people will find the right borrowers, and the right borrowers will do the right deals. So we'll back into the business if we just focus on the people. And that strategy has been incredibly successful. Listen, back to my earlier comments, right? Going from Chicago to Texas, that was a bold move, right? It would have been strategically. You could make a strategic case for saying, like, hey, we're in Chicago, very, very conservative market. Maybe we should go to another somewhat conservative market next, right? That will be a nice stair step, baby step into this whole growth thing. But we said, we found the right person. It was a very unique opportunity to get him on our team. He happened to be in Texas, and so we're like, all right, well, that's what we're doing, and
Yeah.
that's just what we've done this whole time. So yes, there are a few markets that we don't have a local presence in yet that we would like to, but they're pretty obvious. Like Atlanta is a great example. Like we don't have a local person in Atlanta. I would love to have one. I just haven't found the right one.
Yeah.
And we're not just going to put a body in the seat just to fill it. That's way more work and not enough
Yeah.
payoff in the end.
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, it's really been entirely people driven, and that's worked really, really well. And our new challenge, right, is finding ways to get into some of those, call it secondary markets, tertiary, that are really great markets, but maybe aren't big enough to justify a full-blown local office presence.
Hmm.
And that's the challenge I think that we're excited about tackling this year.
That's
Got it.
cool. I did not expect that answer. I expected it to be data driven or something like that, but literally following the right people in the markets and opening them from there. I think that's a really cool way to handle that.
Hmm.
Yeah. There's great deals everywhere. And
Yeah.
in the end, what we believe that the best borrowers, the most successful, like you look at these, investors, and I don't want to pick on any one city, but like, right, you throw out Baltimore or Philadelphia. Those are tougher markets, right?
Yeah.
You really do. Those are, again, block by block markets. You really need to know them well. But if you find the right operators, there's really great business to be done, and there's awesome deals, and so it's just been a part of our philosophy, and I think it's worked it's worked really well.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious. You had said something earlier about when you're hiring the right person, that an important part of bringing that person on is keeping them motivated and keeping them, in a good headspace while they're going through that challenging period, right? What are, for you guys, and maybe it's not you directly, maybe it is, I don't know, but when you're bringing on new people, they're in that kind of like challenging mode. What are some things that you're doing with those people to kind of help keep the motivation there and keeping them going while they're going through that hard point, right? Like if someone, you could kind of relate it, someone brings on a new acquisitions manager and maybe there's not quite enough leads yet and they're ramping up to get to the leads for that person. Like what are some things that you guys usually do with that?
Yeah, so we do what we call a cookbook for our new loan officers. And you can think about a cookbook, it's just a recipe for the outcome that we are looking for. So in our use case, right, the outcome is a closed loan, right? That's how our loan officers
Yeah.
get paid, they close deals. So if you just kind of reverse engineer a closed loan, and you just work backwards, then you can kind of, closed loan, the way we think about it is that's a lagging indicator of all the things that are required to get there, right? And we don't have a lot of control, we have some, but not ultimate control over whether a loan closes or not. So we try to really shift our loan officers' focus, and instead of them defining success as a closed deal, let's just go backwards and let's focus on all the stuff that you can control. Speak of the Amazon guy.
Yeah.
That if you focus on the things that you can control, which is the effort based pieces, and then the technique components, then that can give them things to shoot for, and ways to get that dopamine hit of, oh, I hit my goal here, I got some success. And those little kind of
Mm,
tailwinds are really what kind of gets you through. And then, and in our context, and I'm sure in your example as well, there's a lot of like internal stuff, right? There's learning in our world. It's got to learn the guidelines, and because of the way the strategy and the type of customer, we don't have really strict, black and white guidelines. They're guidelines. It's not a box, right? So you've got to be able to learn, like, where can I move the edges? Like, where, if this is a little over here and outside of the guidelines, what else needs to be, what are the mitigating circumstances that can help us get that deal done for our client? Like, that takes time, and so
yeah.
all these things take some time, and you got to be finding ways to give them some success, in that period, to kind of keep them moving. And so, we just focus on that, right? How many meetings are you taking? We do a thing called so there's introductory meetings or intros, and then there's, what we call a high trust meeting. How many high trust meetings are you having? We LOIs that we're sending out, things of that nature. But it's a lot of the business development stuff, and we just kind of focus on that and and we have weekly meetings. We go through, we let everybody set their own goals, right? What do you want to do? What's the outcome that we're looking for? All right, well, this particular lender may have a different goal than someone else, and so then we reverse engineer that. All right, well, if you want to close this many loans, like, how many of these things do you need to do? How many phone calls do you need to make? How many meetings? It's all of that. And then we set up
Mm,
weekly goals for them. They work against those. We let them know, hey, listen, you're not going to hit every goal every week, but, like, let's, on a weekly basis, let's get together. Let's look at what happened last week. What's working? What's not working? Where are there elements? Where are there opportunities to apply some training? We have a sales coach on retainer for our team that we utilize very heavily in that, part of the process.
yeah.
What technique do we need to be working on? And, we just do that on a weekly basis until they start to feel really comfortable that they can answer any question that a customer throws at them, and that they know what's going on, and can get out there and really, get it going. And some people choose to continue to do that cookbook forever. And some don't, right? But it's a very useful tool in the beginning.
That's cool. I like that. because I think a lot of, at least on the real estate investing side with people I know, like if they're bringing on a new, like if we use the example of bringing on a new acquisitions person and, maybe there's not enough leads yet, right? And part of their job is to go find the leads. Instead of focusing on like, you don't have any deals, focusing on what they're actually doing to make those deals happen, and almost building like a stepping stone milestone is what it sounds like you guys are doing, of like, hey, like we realize we're not going to be exactly where we want to be immediately. It's a long-term game, but what are the steps and actions you're taking every single week? And that could be, outbound calling, or the meetings that you're having, or how many walkthroughs people are going through, and almost focus on that at first. I really like that. That's a really cool idea, to focus on that kind of stuff instead of immediately like, hey, you don't have as many contracts as you should this month. You know what I mean? When it's month one, like it might take 90 days or however long to kind of ramp up to that period, but still giving that person like I don't know what word I'm looking for, but those attainable goals and helping them hit those based off the actions that they're making. That's really cool. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, you break everything into leading and lagging indicators, right? And we have a lot of data at this point that we can go back and look at, right? When you have loan officers that have really big months, you can almost always go back 60 days and you can see a ton of activity, right? Mm-hmm. So, they were making a ton of phone calls. They were slammed with meetings. That translates to deals like 60, maybe 90 days down the road. So those are leading indicators. If we're seeing that activity at a really high level, then we know that in 60 to 90 days, there's probably going to be some positive, some of the outcome that we want, right? Some deals. If we're not seeing that translation to the degree that we feel like we should, now we need to go in and figure out, okay, where's the miss, and how can we get in there and correct that? But you can't. Effort is hard to teach. You know what I mean? So, that's a part of finding the right people that are going to go out and do the work, that are going to grind and have that grit to hustle and all that. But, when they're doing it, then we can play with the stuff in the middle to kind of get the efficiency and the outcomes where we want them to be. But if they're focused on the effort, then the rest of it kind of will fall together, is kind of the way we look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you think about anything you're working on, whether if it's weight loss or, building a business or sales or whatever, it's the daily steps and actions that lead to the result at the end. Right. And it's the same across the board. Like, I think we might have talked about it before, but there's a book called The Slight Edge that talks about that. And if anyone hasn't read it, it's a great book, but it literally talks about like what you do on a day in, day out basis, whether if it's good or bad, leads to an effect long term, right? Like if you eat a cheeseburger every day, like that's going to catch up to you in 20 years and you're not going to like the result. But, if you focus on eating healthier and exercising, that result's going to be the opposite direction. But it is those day-to-day actions that ultimately gets you to where you want to be.
I love a good cheeseburger though, man.
I know, I do too. I throw them in occasionally. Agreed.
We just got a Shake Shack like right around the corner from us.
Oh, I hate you.
And I was like, oh my God, why? Like, why? It's like right there. It's so delicious though.
I told my wife that's probably my favorite burger place. I actually don't feel like crap when I go there, and I don't go very often, but I don't feel like garbage afterwards.
Yeah.
That's saying a lot for a burger place.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Awesome. James, if you don't know what Shake Shack is, man, if you're ever in St. Louis, like it's some good stuff. The guy who owns that company is originally from St. Louis, and now he's all over the place. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. I actually encountered Shake Shack in college. We played some schools in Missouri, so we would do a few Missouri trips every year. And that was where, our hotel would, we would a lot of times stay at this hotel that was walking distance. So after the walkthroughs and stuff, a bunch of us would walk over to Shake Shack, and nice. It was always a something that everyone looked forward to on those Missouri trips.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what they do different. I think it was in Vegas for the first time. I think it was actually last summer. Yeah, last summer. I had never been to Shake Shack, and we went with some friends to Vegas, and they're like, let's go to Shake Shack. And I was like, what is that? And like afterwards, I was like, I don't feel like I need to go take a nap immediately. This is kind
Right.
of nice. Like it's
Well,
like actually decently
Justin,
done.
here in St. Louis, we got Central West End. Now we have De Pere in Chesterfield, Shake Shack. So
All right, Chesterfield's the closest then.
that's good. Yeah. Sorry to get us off
Love it.
topic, but
No, you're good, man.
It's a great topic.
It
We
is.
have Whataburger in Texas that I'm a big fan of.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
isn't that owned by all the Wahlbergs, right?
No, that's Wahlburger.
No,
Oh,
that's Wahlburger.
is that? Oh, I thought that's what he said, Wahlburger.
No, yeah, Whataburger.
Oh, gotcha.
A lot of people pronounce it Waterburger, but
Mm.
yeah, it's a Texas chain. But I think they recently sold, so they're probably popping up in other
Okay.
places now. But yeah, that's
we
a
were
Texas original.
okay. We were just in Pensacola, Gulf Shores area, and I know they have one down there somewhere too.
Yeah,
But yeah, they're pretty good. We actually just got our first Buc-ee's in Missouri, and it's still 2 hours away from me, but we got one.
I don't even know what that
Buc-ee's,
is.
man.
You haven't experienced Buc-ee's, Vince?
Mm-mm.
Oh man, it's the most mind blowing gas station you'll ever go to, and that sounds
Oh,
really
it's a
weird
gas
to say.
station. I thought it was like a chicken restaurant.
No, just a gas station. But it's like, yeah, I don't know how to explain it. There's so much stuff there.
Yeah.
That's the thing. When you try to explain it, it sounds weird, right? It's like a convenience store and a gas station. How could that be? But there is something unique about it. I mean, it's from Texas, and I live in Austin, but where I grew up, it's the original one is not far, and they basically have made an amazing business out of having like extremely clean bathrooms. And then they just built all of this other stuff onto it. It's an interesting concept. Definitely a good case study to check out.
It's kind of like the Wally World gas station convenience store things too. They got those out there now.
Is it like Wawa?
No, it's called Wally World. We got one. There's one here in St. Louis. It's like the most beautiful, pristine gas station / convenience store / food stop. And all their bathrooms are super sophisticated and clean, and
yeah. And this, like the Buc-ee's that I've been to anyway, a couple times, it's like it's also, if you're driving an RV, it is the nicest place to stop because there's so much room, and I kid you not, like 85 pumps, if not more, like each one. It's great. You'll have to drive to Springfield and go to one. I think that's where they have it now, is in Springfield. But yeah, it's pretty crazy.
We're big on customer service, and we're just kind of obsessed with that. And I know lots of people say that, but we really live it. And so we really gravitate to anything that is really great with customer service. And Buc-ee's is one of those things. They've developed a cult following as a result, which is super cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's and I like to look at like those type of experiences, and I'm sure you guys do this too, but apply those kind of things to your business, or what can I apply to our business based off of what I'm seeing, right? I do that all the time with different people that I'm talking to or businesses I interact with. If I notice something, I'm like, oh, all right, I'm going to learn from this and improve our business using this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
cool.
That's huge. I think that's one of the great things about Collective Genius, not to plug them again, but it's an awesome community, but there's so many great things like that you can apply. I don't know if you caught my presentation on Net Promoter Score and how we utilize that, but that's one that I think is applicable.
Okay.
Are you guys familiar with Net Promoter Score?
I am not.
So have you ever bought something and then you got like an email or text message that says like, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer us to your friends or family?
Yes.
So that one question is the Net Promoter Score metric. I think it was like a Harvard Business Review study like 20 years ago that came out with this thing that, if somebody's willing to introduce your brand to their friends or family, that's the ultimate endorsement of customer service. So a lot of major corporations use it and use it as a key metric on how their customer service is doing with their end user. And so we send that. So it's the way it works, scale of 1 to 10. If they give you a 9 or a 10, that's considered a promoter. Somebody who's going to go out of their way to say nice things about you. If they give you a 7 or an 8, that's a passive score, just being nice, but probably not going to say anything good or bad, just, whatever. If it's a 6 or below, that's a detractor. So that's somebody who's likely to go out of their way to say something negative. So the way it works is, you get your responses, the, promoters minus your detractors is your net promoter score on a scale of 100. So we send that survey out twice during every loan, and it goes to everyone involved, right? So the client for sure, but also the real estate agent, if there's an attorney involved, the title company, insurance agent, anyone who touches the transaction will be surveyed. And so first of all, that's super valuable information, right? You're seeing how all these different parties interact with you and what their experience is. And we want it to be excellent because we really thrive. And we historically haven't done a lot of marketing. It's really been word of mouth and referral business. And that's how you get it, right? Is you have to be really good. And you need to hear that feedback in real time. But what we've done that I think is unique and has really been powerful for our culture is that anytime someone fills out that survey, it automatically is emailed to every single person at the company. So it doesn't matter what your role is, CEO to, I don't know, loan close, whatever everybody sees that feedback and they see it in real time. And if there's a space for people to write comments, so you'll have somebody gives you a negative score, they may tell you why. So everybody sees it on every single transaction. And so what it does is it on a daily basis, multiple times a day, it affirms like what is the most important thing that we do. It's the customer experience. And every day, everybody's email is just popping with those things. And if we get any score that's less than an 8, that person gets a phone call within 24 hours just to figure out, to learn, right? What happened? Is it something that we can correct? And we've made a lot of changes to our process based on that feedback. And sometimes it's a misunderstanding and we can address that quickly, but customers don't often expect that phone call. And so that's number one, going above and beyond. But what we've seen is that process really it's baked into our DNA now that customer service is number one. And as a result, our numbers in that survey are extremely good. I think 3 years, I think this year we ended up with a 91 for the year. Last year was a 91. I think the year before that was a 95. So, and if you go and look that up and, do a little poking around, like scores in the 90s are fairly unheard of. It's a lot of companies are pretty stoked to get a 70 something. So, it's something that we're very proud of, but it's the culmination of kind of this culture that we've built around the transparency and just the emphasis on that aspect.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Vince, we got some stuff to talk about.
I've already wrote down notes. I don't know if you saw me just over here writing things down. Yeah, I've got some notes for us.
Yep, I did the same. I know the CRM we use internally at both of our companies has that ability to do something like that. We're not utilizing it right now, and I love the immediate feedback to everybody, right? And then it keeps. Not only keeps the people that are directly dealing with the customers involved, but also keeps like leadership accountable to making sure that that's being improved too, which I think that's an important part. And it's not just an email that, is just, it's another email, I'll read it later kind of thing. People are actually going through and reading that. That's really cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And we use it in a lot of things, like when you log into our tech platform, the first thing everyone sees when they log in is the leaderboard, right? So we have every loan officer, their team, and then all these metrics that we track. And one of the most important is their individual team's net promoter score. So every team, every pod has a meter that shows what their net promoter score is. And anybody can go and click on that, and you can go in and read the responses from their customers. It's all right there. And it's something that's upfront that we really focus on. I will say, like, one note on that is you do have to be careful, like with negative feedback, that you don't necessarily like punish people, or there's not like because that will lead to people hiding the ball, right? That if there's a problem, they don't want to jump in front of that. They want to kind of hold it and try to solve it. And then that creates a really bad customer experience in the end. But that can be a natural reaction if you come down too hard on the negative feedback. We just kind of, the culture that we've built is that negative feedback is an opportunity to learn, right? Everybody makes mistakes. It's just going to happen, but we need to be able, build a culture that people own those mistakes. And the most important thing, right? You deliver good news fast, but you deliver bad news faster. If something happens, and you guys are operators, like things happen. These deals get messy. Something happens. We gotta tell the communicate with the client immediately so that everybody has as much time to react as possible. And it might mean the deal doesn't make sense anymore, and that's okay, because we're not here for one deal, right? We're here for a long relationship of deals. So when you look at it through that lens, it's like, hey, let's just get out in front of this immediately. And at the very least, the outcome may not be any different, but because we communicated and the customer felt informed, then their experience, the way they feel afterwards, is much different than if it's a big surprise at the end that they didn't see coming, and they know that they should have known it earlier. That's the last thing you want. And so that's what how we try to use it.
Got it. Yeah, that's super cool. I mean, we're big proponents of, like, especially when there's an issue, over communicate, just make sure that everyone's in the loop. It's not, like you said, we want to address it as soon as possible, not wait for 2 days or, something like that, right? Get up on top of it and make sure that it's taken care of as quick as possible. So, and there's so much of that too, that can be related to just real estate investing in general for the people that are listening, right? Especially even the net promoter score. Like that's, I'm assuming that's probably recorded in the CG portal. So I'm going to go in and watch that if it's in there. I would imagine it is. So, that's really cool. I appreciate you going over that. That's something I think we'll be implementing here in the next quarter. Is something that I think we're going to see come up here soon. So yeah, that's awesome, man.
No, that's awesome. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. Very cool. Vince, James, any kind of like closing thoughts you guys want to chat through before we wrap?
I don't have any. I don't know that. Listen, I think we covered some really cool stuff. I'm glad to hear that at least the net promoter score thing resonates, and hopefully this has been valuable for you guys, and just really appreciate you guys having me on and having the conversation. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for coming on. It's been great just getting to know you even a little bit better today, and I'm assuming I'll see you next week at CG.
You sure will. I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. Looking forward to it. Yeah. Thanks for coming on, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I guess I would say one more thing, James, for our listeners, if they do want to find a local branch, they can just go to the website, right? Figure out, what states and cities you're operating in, and get hooked up with you guys.
That's right. Yeah. RenovoFinancial.com. We there's a way on there to go in and connect with us. And, we've got Jessica Ortiz Medina is amazing. She kind of handles all that inbound stuff, and she can chat with anybody to figure out, what's going on, and if we can be helpful, and then get you down to the local offices, and, set some time to meet with our team in person or what have you. And, always happy to have those conversations, and excited to be out there and hopefully helping lots more real estate investors.
Awesome.
Yeah, make sure you guys check it out, renovofinancial.com. We'll also post it in the show notes and links and all that kind of stuff so everyone can look at it. But yeah, thanks again for coming on, man. I think this was really good. I know we had some internet issues at the beginning, but you were right. The location you were in worked a lot better. So
yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for being flexible, guys. I appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for showing up, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Same here. Cheers.